Everyone. So it is Saturday, January 31st. Yeah, the 31st. So it's the end of the month. I need to go to a bookstore. So if you are new, I'm starting this series where I go to a different independent bookstore around the Chicagoland area every month. I will link to the first episode that I did. And so this month we are going to Evanston. It's like cold and snowy. I've been pushing off doing this the entire month because like my kid's been sick, and then there was like extreme cold and snow and all this stuff, and I didn't want to be going out in that if I didn't need to. And so it's the last day of the month, so it's time to do the thing. But yeah, we're going to Evanston because it's not crazy far, and I feel like it'd be a little bit easier to do than heading into the city of Chicago itself. So there is a bookstore there. We'll probably grab lunch while we're there. There's an Afghani place that I want to take my husband to that I love, but we've never been together, and I haven't been since we've been married, and it's like relatively close to where the bookstore is. We may go to Goodwill afterwards. We're taking our kid. She's currently napping, and so we are planning to go after she wakes up from her nap and do lunch and go shopping. And so we'll see how long she lasts. That will kind of determine how long we're out. There's actually like two bookstores in Evanston. The one that I'm going to go to today for sure is called Zora's Place. It is owned by a Black woman. It's relatively like small in terms of selection. It's not like a full-blown bookstore, but it like focuses on books by Black authors, which, you know, I'm all for. And it's new and it's owned by a Black woman, and so I've been wanting to go and check it out. It's supposed to be a really cute space. I follow them on Instagram. There's another place in Evanston called Bookends and Beginnings, which I've been to a bunch of times, and I love that store too, and I would love to go there today too, but I don't know if we'll have the time to do both. So definitely Zora's Place, and yeah, we can see what we end up finding there, because again, they have like a relatively like curated selection, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to be able to find, but that's part of the fun of this series. You know, like I don't go in with any sort of expectations of what to pick up. I kind of just let serendipity happen, and whatever I find will be the book that I read for this video. So yeah, I'm waiting for my kid to wake up. I thought I would just show you a couple of other things. The book I just finished last night, I got from the library, The Water Bearers. This is a memoir of mothers and daughters. This is Sasha Bonet talking about like her maternal lineage. So it starts with her grandmother, talks about her mother and her aunts and her life, and as long as her being a mother to her daughter. Interesting memoir. I'm still like processing and digesting it, but there will be a review of this. I don't know if it'll come before or after this vlog, but finish this. If it's out already, I'll link to it. And then also recently, like literally this week, my husband bought me a Kobo, which I'm so excited about. So I used to have a Kindle. I like bought it back in like, I want to say like 2015 or something like that. But I bought it like used / refurbished. So I like tried looking it up on Amazon to see how long I had that thing. And there's no record of it because I didn't buy it from Amazon. I bought it used and refurbished, so it was cheap, even cheaper than what it normally would go to. So I had a Kindle Paperwhite, and I really did enjoy having an e-reader. It's like really convenient, really nice. I basically only would get ebooks from the library, so I would never pay for ebooks. But like the more and more I've like moved away from Amazon, and especially now I basically never use Amazon. I shouldn't say never. I'd maybe use it like once a year. But like the Kindle was like the one thing that like kept me in the Amazon ecosystem. And I didn't want to get rid of my Kindle because I hate also like purchasing, especially like new electronic devices, if I have perfectly good ones around. But like sometime over the new year, I either like completely lost my Kindle, like I took it somewhere and misplaced it, or it's lost somewhere in this house. Now that I have a toddler, like mine and my husband's theory is that one day we're just going to be like cleaning some random corner of this house, and there I will find my Kindle because my kid will probably have just put it there. But I have no idea where it is. And I've been a little sad about it. Like it's been fine because obviously I still have like physical books I can read, but like especially with a kid, having an e-reader is just so nice and convenient. So I always knew that if I, like when my Kindle died or whatever happened, I was going to get a non-Kindle, and so I got a Kobo, and I got the Kobo Clara, and it's just so nice. I think partially it's because like my Kindle was so old that like any new e-reader would be so nice, but I got like, or he got me like one of the official covers that it turns into a stand so I can prop it up, which is so great. With the Kobo, you can just like automatically link your library card and your library to it. So any ebooks you check out from the library just automatically show up on here, which is so nice. I don't know if I can browse my library via here or if I have to use the Libby app, which is fine because I have the Libby app on my phone. And yeah, it's so funny because I'm going to be doing this episode. So I'm going to be like reading the book that I get from Zora's Place. But I'm also just really excited to start using my e-reader. It's also so nice and small. The cover is just really nice. Yeah, just like even like when I was like setting it up and like typing on here, like the touch just feels so nice. Like, yeah, I love this thing. I'm already a big fan. If you want like a more detailed video about the Kobo, let me know down in the comments because I am willing to do it, but I will definitely want to spend some time with it before I talk about it. I decided to go with the black and white over the color versions because personally, I mean, I love the way the color ones look, but I was like reading about it and people are like, if you're only going to read books, like get the black and white because like the crispness of the e-ink screen on the black and white is just so much nicer. It's like if you got the color versions and you never saw the black and white version, you probably will not notice a difference. But I was like, I rarely read in color. Like I don't read graphic novels or anything like that very often. And if I do, I can just get the physical copy. And like my husband was like, if you got a color version, would you start reading graphic novels on your e-reader? And I was like, maybe, but I feel like it's a relatively small chance. So I decided that the black and white would be the one way that I go. And honestly, like the screen is so nice. Again, I don't know what like modern Kindles are like, but I'm really happy with this. Yeah, let's wrap things up and I'll see you, or you'll see me when we're out and about. Quick book haul while my child hangs out down there. So I went to Zora's Place. Cute spot, but limited selection. So it felt like today there was just not a lot of options. A lot of the books I would have been interested in were ones that I've already read and own. So I decided to go with one board book for my daughter. My husband was there with me and was like, we need to get our daughter comfortable with wearing a bonnet at night. So hopefully this helps. And then I got this hardcover for I, Medusa, which I actually have already read, but I don't own a copy of. I just read it recently. I got a copy from the library and I really enjoyed it. So I was happy to purchase this. And then I got a bookmark, which their bookmarks are so nice, like laminated with a ribbon, a couple of different color options. And I think she was just giving them out for free in general. So since I couldn't find a book there that I haven't read yet to read for this vlog, we ended up going to the other bookstore in Evanston, called Bookends and Beginnings. First up, I picked up the Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride, which I've read before and loved. And I needed my own copy of it, so I figured I would get that. I picked up People of Means by Nancy Johnson, who this book takes place in Chicago, or at least part of it takes place in Chicago. The author is from Chicago originally. Again, haven't heard of it before, looked it up, has high ratings on Goodreads. So this is going to be the book that I'm definitely going to be reading for this vlog. Based on the synopsis on the back, there's kind of like two timelines. There's one taking place in 1959, where you're following someone named Frida, who is like headed off to university and leaving behind the Jim Crow South. And then the second timeline takes place in 1992 Chicago, where Frida's daughter is like getting started with her career and things like that. So this sounds like right up my alley. So I'm very excited to check this out. But then also, even though technically I was like, I usually just do one book that I've read before, one book that I haven't read before. When I saw this in the bookstore, I could not buy it, and that's Orange Wine. So if you aren't aware, there's a channel on YouTube called My Name is Marina's. She also has like a TikTok and all that stuff. She started her own book with Bindery, or her own like publishing imprint via Bindery. To see it in person, and I was like, I have to get this too. I don't know if I'm going to be able to read both of these. We'll see how long it takes me to read this one. But this is one I'm also very excited to read too. So there might just be a separate video for this one. So yeah, those are my books. Very excited to get started with my reading, but as you can hear, I need to, hang out with my child because she is demanding my attention. So I'll talk to you guys later. Hi. So it's been a couple days. I'm about 100 pages into People of Mean, so I thought I would do a quick check-in. I also realized I wasn't using my microphone in the last couple clips I recorded, so my bad. Hopefully the sound quality is still fine. But yes, I'm about 100 pages in, and in this book, you are following two different timelines. There is Frida, who her timeline starts in 1959. She is starting out at Fisk University, which is an HBCU in Nashville, Tennessee, and she's from Chicago, and so she's heading down to the South to like be there for an extended period of time and things like that. And in one of the early scenes, she ends up meeting this boy on campus who she knows is like not a person that her parents would approve of. Not that he's bad by any means, but it's just like not of the social status that her parents would like expect. But they end up going on a date. They go to the state fair, and Frida has her first experience. When she goes to the bathroom, she sees like a whites only and a coloreds only sign separating the bathrooms, and like she has like a very like strong reaction, and like she starts to see like more people on campus sort of preparing for like civil rights related protests, and like the student group sort of preparing themselves to do lunch counter protests and things like that. And so she knows that like her parents would not approve of her like participating in these protests and things like that, because her parents basically think that like, if you work hard and just do the right thing, then you'll be fine. And like, are things perfect? No, but like, it's not that bad, etc. And then there is also like a guy who her parents want her to like meet up with and things like that, because they think that that guy would be like an appropriate sort of suitor or mate for Frida, so to speak. And then there is the like 1992 timeline where you are following Frida's daughter Tulip, and you also see in that timeline that Frida ends up with the guy that her parents wanted. And Tulip is working at this PR firm. The timeline of this, it's happening right around the time of the Rodney King trials, and so there's a lot of like just racial anxiety and tensions happening in the country, and Tulip is trying to figure out sort of how she feels about this whole situation, because she's also grown up with Means and hasn't like directly seen police brutality or things along those lines. And so she's kind of coming to her own reckoning with like how she wants to live her life with like these things coming up. Does she want to like speak up and say something or not? Her parents also kind of have the same belief of like, if Rodney King was acting accordingly, he wouldn't have been in this situation. And like, she even has like a roommate who is also Black, and she's just like, I don't want to be a part of these protests and things like that. I just want to like go to work and then come home and do my own thing and just enjoy life, sort of stuff. And Tulip is like trying to figure out how she wants to handle what she's doing and stuff like that. So it's interesting because you see like the mother and daughter basically living parallel lives. Tulip is dating someone who her parents don't approve of. He like drives a city bus and things like that. And so her parents are constantly like making snide comments about him. And so you see sort of like the parallels between Frida and Tulip. And so I'm really interested to see where this ends up going. It's interesting to read a book about like the civil rights movement and various like racial movements in the America from like a class perspective, because I think that something that a lot of people don't realize or don't think about is like how class plays a part in all of this, but also how like unpopular things like the civil rights movement was during its time period, because I think that also like provides a lot of context for like modern day protests and things like that, and how unpopular they can be with the general public. But like looking back people always feel better about the protests and things like that because they were like, oh yeah, they were doing the right thing. So yeah, it's interesting to sort of see how class is playing a part in all of this in this book. And I'm very intrigued to see sort of like where both of these storylines end up going, especially because you know that like Frida ends up with George when you know that, or you can tell that like Frida actually really likes this other person. I have a theory, which I'm going to lay out here. There's a scene in the 1992 storyline where Tulip is at her parents' house and they're like watching the news after dinner. They see it's like the Rodney King trial, like the non-guilty verdict has just been announced. And so they cut to like scenes in LA of like people protesting and things like that. And then like Frida's mom has like a strong reaction, like drops a dish on the floor and then like runs into the bedroom, and then like the father leaves the house and like no one says anything, and like Tulip's just like WTF. And my theory is that like on the screen Frida saw the guy from her college that she, you know, was in love with and things like that. And this has been like a tension point for Frida and her husband throughout their marriage and things like that. That's my theory. My other theory, because I was like, it's either that or it's something like he died during the civil rights movement or something, and like she saw someone that reminded her of him or something along those lines. Yeah, that's my running theory right now. So we'll see if that ends up actually being true. But yeah, so far I'm enjoying this. The writing style is not necessarily like my favorite, but I'm enjoying it. It feels like a pretty quick read. And like I said, I'm intrigued to see sort of where this ends up going. And I like the fact that this is a book that's talking about like the class aspect of all of this, which I feel like a lot of times can be missing. So yeah, gonna continue on, but just thought I would provide this quick update. Hi guys. So I finished reading People of Means last night. I actually ended up staying up is a relative term because I usually go to bed pretty early. But I ended up staying up till 10 p.m. I know, I'm wild. Finishing this book yesterday. And so yeah, I thought, quick wrap up of this. Overall, like this book, didn't quite love it, mostly because of the writing style. I think that the plot and like the things that it's exploring in terms of like themes and things like that are interesting and unique. There's some specific parts about like the civil rights movement and also just what various racial movements past the civil rights movement have looked like and were like for the people during that time period. I found that to be interesting, and I think that's like a good like sort of topic and thing that I feel like that in and of itself makes this book worth picking up. There's like an author's note at the end talking about how the author herself lived in Chicago in the 90s, and so she was around during the Rodney King trial and the aftermath of that. And she talked about how she like talked to lots of people who went to Fisk University in Nashville during the civil rights movement, and specifically, she talked a lot to Nikki Giovanni, who was there, and like she provided like a lot of like context and information about the civil rights movement that you typically don't hear about, that is discussed, or like those details are a part of this story as well. I think that to me, like the writing itself and the way that this is structured feels a little bit simplistic in my opinion. It's not quite as complex. And I think that if you are someone who reads a lot about the civil rights movement, there's nothing in here that's like overly surprising or anything along those lines. I think that this is a good book for audiences who don't typically read about the civil rights movement, to provide like some new layers and context to some of the stuff that was happening. I think that this book also provides sort of like that context of like, when these protests and stuff are happening, whether it's in the 1960s or in the 90s or now, it's usually very unpopular. And usually the people who are a part of these movements end up having to make a choice about whether they want to take the safe and comfortable route or like take a risk and be a part of these movements. You can definitely tell that like Nancy Johnson is using this novel as a way to explore a lot of these different details. And I think that's admirable in and of itself. So yeah, like I wouldn't want to discourage people from picking up this book. This is probably like a solid like 3.5 star book for me. I think that this would also be like a good like book club book. I mean, there's even like book club questions at the end of this sort of paperback version of the book. And I think that sort of like the complexity of the characters having to make these complicated choices and things like that are like interesting and worth like reviewing and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed my experience with this book. So I would recommend it. But I think for me, it's like a 3.5 star book, which again, isn't a bad thing in my opinion. Like that's a solid read. And I like the fact that it's talking about some of these momentous events in United States history from a different perspective and bringing into the class aspect of it all, which a lot of times gets overlooked and ignored when talking about the civil rights movement. Like, it's mentioned very briefly in this book as well, but there's like this common misconception that like every Black person was part of the civil rights movement and supportive of it and things like that. And again, that wasn't true. And this book explores that a little bit too, and the different perspectives that people were taking during that time period, which I liked. So yeah, overall enjoyed this experience with this book, and I'm going to wrap it up here. I'll read Orange Wine another time, but I have library books that I need to get to, so I don't want this video to drag on much longer in terms of like the length of time that it will take me to complete it. So Orange Wine will come another day. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this experience. Overall, I'm really glad I got to go to Zora's place, even though I was hoping there would be more selection there, but small businesses doing their best. And I'm really glad I got to go to Bookends and Beginnings again. I wish I could have spent more time there because they have such a wonderful selection of books, and they even like broke out their used book section into like a different space like next to it. And so I would have loved to explore that as well, but I had my kid with me and we needed to get home and all that stuff. So yeah, another successful run to an independent bookstore, picking up a book I never would have picked up or had heard of otherwise. I don't know where I'm going to be heading to next month. We'll see. I have some ideas, but we'll see what actually happens. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the second episode, and I'll see you guys next time.